Hey guys and fellow whiskey lovers, welcome back to Malt Mariners on the Whiskey Roads, and I have arrived in Canada 2 days ago, and I'm really happy to start out with a great and very interesting distillery, Macaloneys. And I'm here with
Dr. Graeme Macaloney, the founder and master whiskey maker here at Macaloneys Distillery.
Thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, we just had a tour through the distillery. Definitely check out the tour video on the channel. You'll find it if you're here already. You're probably the perfect person because you're actually Scottish, but you have a distillery in Canada. So you're probably the perfect person for the first question. What do you think is the biggest difference between, generally speaking, Canadian whiskey and Scotch whiskey?
I mean, it's a tough question because if you came to Canada, 15, 20 years ago,
yeah,
it would be pure rye. There'd be no single malt whiskey whatsoever.
Yes.
So you're looking at your big brand distilleries, half a dozen of them, the newest being 40 Creek, right?
Yeah.
That was it, rye whiskey, nothing else. However, Scotch connoisseurship is Canada's ranked number 7 in the world, just after Germany,
yeah,
number 6 for consumption of Scotch single malt. So there's been a lot of interest in single malt, and so there's a new cohort, just as in Europe, a new cohort of craft distillers coming along.
Yes.
And Macaloneys, I think, has pretty much been on the vanguard of that. So
yeah,
there's some really great single malt whiskey distilleries across Canada now.
So would you say then that, because for me as a whiskey lover, when I look at the world category, I would, for example, at the States, the US, I would look at the States as a classic or original whiskey nation from bourbon and rye perspective, but I would look at them as a new world whiskey in the single malt category. Would you say that is more like sort of the same for Canada? So you mentioned there's old school, old brands of Canadian whiskey,
yeah,
and there's sort of like the new kids on the block kind of
yeah,
brands.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that really summarises. I don't know if I'd have a lot to add to that, honestly. That nails it.
Okay, so would you say then that there is no, is there a national profile to Canadian whiskey?
So that's a big question, right? I honestly feel that, okay, if you look at Japanese whiskey, it's essentially Scotch single malt whiskey, perhaps finessed with some Japanese culture.
Yeah.
When it comes to New World whiskies, whether it's German New World, well, that's not New World, but craft.
For
right?
whiskey, I would say it is New World whiskey.
Yeah. Australian, Tasmania,
yes,
Canada, America. I think for me, the players that are the quality players are looking to do classic styles of whiskey. So in our case, it's classic single malts and classic single pot stills. Sons of Vancouver, it'd be classic rye whiskies. And I think those craft distillers anywhere in the world that aspire to do the classics, but perhaps with higher quality, because there's a greater focus on quality ingredients, quality casks, etc. Craftsmanship that puts aside cost over quality. I think that's where we differentiate. So it's not by geography per se. I think it's by, quality craft versus the big boys.
Yeah. How would you say that? Because I try to wrap my head around Canadian whiskey. I read the book from David Kergomont. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name right. I'm really sorry. I don't think he'll watch this video, but he actually sent me an email to recommend some distilleries to visit. It's a great book. If you ever get the chance to read it, I would certainly recommend to do that if you want to understand Canadian whiskey. But I still haven't really understood it, to be honest, because for us Scotch whiskey lovers, the regulations are quite clear. I mean, Scotland has a really strict and easy to understand policy how to make whiskey, like 3 years in a day in oak casks. Single malt has to be distilled in a pot still. So that's easy for me to understand. But Canadian whiskey is much more complicated. There's words thrown around like base spirit and flavoring whiskey. But I mean, before we come to your whiskey in particular, because I think you're not really working in that category, how would you explain that type of whiskey to somebody like me who's more familiar with single malt Scotch whiskey?
I think those terms or terminology are coming from the old traditional rye producers in Canada, the big boys.
Yeah.
And I would equate, although it's rye whiskey, I would equate them to essentially blended Scotch whiskey, right?
Yeah.
Where they're working with flavour components, etc. And there's it's priced more accessibly.
Yes.
It's perhaps not the connoisseur's drink. And then there's single malt.
Yeah.
Right. Now, having said that, and it sounds like I'm doing a big plug for Sons of Vancouver more than Macaloneys, but there's an example of a rye company, or 40 Creek when they came along, rye company that are actually doing more focus on the quality, right, instead of the cost affordable volume, if you will. For me, Macaloneys, we are out and out high quality single malt or single pot still, and we really do, as I joked earlier, want to take on the Scots and beat them at their own game.
Yes.
Right. So for I think for the craft boys, it's all about. It's very similar to Scotch. It really is very similar to Scotch. We have a 3-year rule here in Canada, right? It's got to be oak casks. So those rules are all the same.
Yes.
The only slightly controversial thing about Canadian whiskey is that you have the 9.09% rule, that you can add 9% of anything to a Canadian whiskey and still call it whiskey.
Yes.
And that has, to some extent, perhaps gotten Canadian rye whiskey a bad rap. I heard one horror story where there was a tax benefit on the failed Florida orange crop when there was a frost, and the tax benefit was get some Canadian whiskey and put orange juice in it and sell it as right. Really horrible example. I think the craft producers are all about the quality, and they're not going to do that sort of abuse, if you will.
So if you're like me, trying to sort of put a national whiskey category and trying to put it in one box, so to speak, it sounds like it's really complicated with Canadian whiskey, because on one hand, you guys have such a long history, such an old history in whiskey.
Yeah.
I mean, Canada is one of the oldest whiskey countries in the world, with Scotland and Ireland and America, the States. But still, you have a new, thriving craft whiskey distillery community. So, would you, as you mentioned before, you would probably count yourself more in the craft whiskey area, right?
I would. What I would add, and so that absolutely correct. The big whiskey country, traditional whiskey countries have a bimodal split. The big traditional boys, big spirits, and then the new craft. But Germany, okay, you don't have traditional big companies, but you have craft sector, right?
Yeah.
And I think your craft sector, our craft sector, Australia's, etc. The one thing I found interesting when I went to Ireland, and this is the juxtaposition of big spirits and craft.
Yes.
When I went to Ireland to study the traditional Irish method, which we do as the triple distilled pot still, I met the master distiller at Middleton Distillery, and in the past, they wouldn't be very necessarily collegial with the Scots. There was two competitive industries.
Yes.
But now they've opened their doors. And he explained that we're happy to share the traditional Irish method because we're concerned that all these craft guys, all these yahoos that come along, might spoil the reputation of the traditional industry. And I thought that was a very progressive observation. is that, yeah, you can have craft guys. We had one horror story in Canada, no names mentioned.
Yes.
He would put a sliver of wood into a bottle with new make and call it whiskey.
Oh boy.
Now, I don't think
The traditionalists are
they don't
on the
exist
toast.
anymore,
Yes.
and it was against the law.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
But so I think the craft sector, as much as I say the guys that are going to be successful are taking the best of the traditional industry and doing better with better ingredients, you've got to watch that some of these guys don't go off the deep end and maybe drag down the reputation of single malt whiskey by doing something that's like too funky.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the story between Irish and Scotch is very interesting. So did you think in terms of when they opened the doors, in terms of talking to you, you mean they thought they'd rather help you to make a good pot-still whiskey than to ruin the pot-still category?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yes.
And then if I can't resist it, but by having learned best Scotch practices on a traditional process, I then took the Irish traditional process, applied best practices to that, and then our Kildare won World's Best Irish against the Pride of Ireland, 21 and 27-year-olds. So.
I mean, probably not best Irish, because it's not an Irish whiskey. It's
Best triple pot still.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because before I knew you guys or your whiskey and saw you have a pot-still whiskey, I've always asked myself, why does nobody make outside of Ireland a pot-still whiskey? Because it's pot-still whiskey. Pot-still itself is not a designated origin or a protected origin. Irish whiskey is, but pot-still itself is not. And then I saw you doing that. I was like, oh, finally somebody's doing that outside of Ireland, because I think it's really interesting to have a pot-still whiskey that is made from malted and unmalted barley outside of Ireland.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy you guys do it. I really like your pot-still whiskey. So maybe let's talk about a little bit about your whiskey in particular. Yeah, we have a couple of here lined up, and I'll show you guys in a flyby some of the whiskeys, obviously. So what is your current core range, or what can people expect to buy at the moment from your distillery outside of your distillery itself?
So the core range, there's kind of 5 key core whiskies, and they're kind of arranged in the way that you might do a masterclass tasting, if you will. Start off with the lightest flavour profile, and that would be what we used to call Kildare, is now called Triple Take. Right, that's this guy here, the Triple Take.
I can show it to the camera if you can talk about it.
And that's the rebranded Kildare that won World's Best Pot Still. So a great beginning whiskey because it's light and fruity, very refined, easy drinking. But then you would move on to basically our, I don't have it here, but our what was previously called the Kathnahaven, very popular in Germany. Yeah. Christoph Kirsch, the importer, brings lots of it in. Kathnahaven is now rebranded as Truth Serum, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, but at the moment it'll still be in Germany as Kathnahaven. Big sherry bomb, right? So you've gone from delicate pot still to a big sweet sherry bomb of a single malt whiskey.
Yeah.
And then something that we've just launched, I'd be fascinated to get your reaction to it. A honeyed whiskey, honey infused single malt whiskey, right? Just about to launch it. As part of the core. Trying to attract a younger crowd in, but with the sensibility of using great wood, great spirit, and a really high quality honey farm to bring together the flavour profiles, right? And then moving into the peated range. I mean, our peat project is, I think...
Can show this one to the camera so people can also see, because you have 2 different labels here, right? You can also tell the story about this one. So this is the new label, Macaloneys.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the 2 labels side by side. And so again, because the traditional demographic for single malt whiskey consumers is kind of 40 years and up, we want to have the branding appeal to a younger crowd, try and bring them in. It helps everyone. Yeah. But the juice, as we call it in Scotland, the juice in these bottles is the same high quality, right? But the peated ones that finish off the core range, We've called them the Peat Project as an umbrella because, as you saw earlier, we have control over our own peat smoking.
Yes.
That means I can explore terroir with different sources of peat that you'll taste later.
Awesome. I can't wait to do that, because we did it on the tour. You told me that you're actually experimenting with different peat terroirs. That's super exciting.
And then, of course, you layer over that, different casks as well. Now you've got, it's the fun and joy of this. Yeah. It's like almost becomes a lifetime exploration, right?
Yeah.
Just of Macaloneys peated whiskies, never mind everyone else's.
Yeah. So can you mention some of the stuff that I will taste later on? Where does the peat come from? What is your different areas of peated flavors whiskey you have at the moment?
So the main peat that we use in most of the core whiskies is local peat, but it comes from across the border in Washington State.
Okay.
Right.
So American peat.
It's American peat, right? And you can imagine trying to bring some American dirt across the Canadian border, right? That was a challenge. Yeah. Lots of paperwork.
I can imagine.
But it's actually local peat because it's a 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Crazy.
And actually, I can't resist it. But when the Scots were opening up Canada, the fur trappers. It was Scottish fur trapping companies opened up the Western Canada, and the same company controlled British Columbia, where we are, and Washington State. So we were always part of the same geography. It's just that there's this border divides us now.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the local peat Washington. And fantastic base peat. It's not big medicinal that can turn some people off. It'll be reminiscent of campfire, wooden fires, or even burning heather, right, with the wood burning and the floral notes, right? So you'll experience that. The other terroirs, I went back to Islay, which actually is my ancestral home.
Yes.
My 7th great-grandfather was an Elach.
Yeah.
Right? I'm descended from Elachs, right, which I'm very proud of. And I went back, and last peat cutter on the island cuts peat for the locals to burn on their fireplace in wintertime.
Yeah.
Thousands of years they've done this. Well, he gives me some peat, bring it back to Canada. So now you've got a different terroir, a hint of medicinal there. And then the other main peat source that you'll try today, West Coast inspiration, but even traditional Scottish Irish inspiration, seaweed.
Okay.
Because in Scotland and Ireland, I grew up eating seaweed as a kid, as a snack, right? A dried snack. In the old days, they would dig seaweed into the peat to fertilize the peat. But here on the West Coast, we've got one of the most pristine environments on the entire planet on the west coast of Vancouver Island. First Nations, the Native Americans, farm the seaweed there, and we collaborate with a company that works with them. I get this sugar kelp. Sugar kelp, when you chew on it, sweet. When you burn it on top of the peat, sweet smoke. And when you taste it, the maritime influence is undeniable. It's spectacular.
Sounds really, really fun.
Yeah. There is one other peat coming along. It's local Canadian peat, and the fun story behind that was some engineers building a road. Civil engineers dug through this peat bog, and they came running over like 2 kids at Christmas time because they're peat enthusiasts, peated whiskey enthusiasts. We found some peat, Graeme. We found some peat. We went out and figured out how to harvest this, but I had to get a crew of volunteers to dig this out the ground, and I put an email out, and all these peat heads came out the woodwork. I told them, you're working for a Scotsman for no money, and they all volunteered. One of them, even a Canadian, turned up wearing a Scottish kilt because this was such a celebration of whiskey making history, to go dig some local peat to make peated whiskey here. So that's the Canadian Vancouver Island peat, and it'll release in about a year. Herbal, like lemongrass, thyme, cardamom, totally different terroir. Just absolutely amazing, the difference in terroir.
Yeah, exciting. I can't wait. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So you're a Canadian-based whiskey producer. If you could change any of the regulations or the law behind whiskey in Canada, do you have any specific thing you would change?
No, I don't think there is a need to change it. Maybe, I think what could be fun would be to be able to use alternative wood types.
Yes.
Because all of the casks by regulation in Scotland and Canada must be oak casks.
Okay. Yeah.
But it'd be kind of cool
Yeah.
to try different, apple wood or whatever, right?
Yeah.
See what it is. Now, with my peat project and with my smoker,
Yeah.
one of the things in future I'd like to do
Okay.
is actually do wood smoked
Yeah.
grain, wood smoked barley,
You
right?
can do that. Yes.
And so now you can explore applewood, cherrywood, etc. In Europe, we have this tradition of smoked food,
Yes.
smoked cheese, smoked meats. Smoked whiskey could
Sure.
be spectacular,
Yeah.
right, with the wood smoke.
Yeah. Right. So we covered a little bit about your current whiskey, your core range, and we've browsed through the warehouse, which is really really interesting. Lovely smell. I mean, can't really get any better. So anything particular you want to add maybe on your cask maturations, or do you have anything special planned on that side at the moment?
So for me, that is one of the joys of being a whiskey maker, is playing with different cask types. They're all oak, but it's a revelation for me to try an Italian Recioto sweet red wine, right? I want to get try with some Mizunara at some point, etc. Right? So playing with the different cask wood types is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And especially when you've got 3 different spirit types, seeing how they react to the different
Oh yeah,
woods
of course.
is fascinating.
You have different, peated, unpeated, and pot-still.
Yeah. But to share that joy with the punters, right? The geeks, as you call them, I call them punters, right? We do have a cask program, but the cask program, we try to make it more accessible. So instead of an individual or a club having to buy an entire cask, which at cask strength is still going to be 250 bottles.
Yes.
That's a lot of bottles. What we do is we do a scale back cask program where minimum order 36 bottles, and we can do a custom label on it, so it becomes a personal thing as well. But it makes it a lot more accessible for people that way, and it's a way to share the joy of the wood program.
So you can basically buy a part of a cask. Then.
Yeah. In the past, that was new make spirit that they would wait for 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
Not 12 years, only 4 years, right? And it's gold medal quality after 4 years. But now we've actually, because it's an impatient, we want it now kind of a culture these days, we actually offer up mature spirit.
Yeah.
And so we can actually take a mature cask and then bottle it, depending on what cask people want.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds interesting. As you mentioned in the tour video, your whiskey is maturing much quicker over here than in Scotland or Ireland, roughly. So, that sounds really interesting. In Scotland, besides the whiskey itself, for many distilleries, the visitors are quite a big thing also. Is that the same here? Do you feel like it's the same influence in or how important is that side on your company right now?
Yeah, actually, it's the reason why we chose to come out here to Victoria.
Okay.
Originally, I was 1,600 kilometres inland in Alberta, Edmonton, Alberta. Not a lot of tourism there compared with Victoria. We have the cruise ships, the Alaska cruise ships, 300 ships every year with 2,000 or 3,000 people come here. But it's a great destination here for anyone around the world, one of the top destinations.
I mean, I'm here for only 2 days right now, but it's a lovely place. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we chose deliberately to come here. And then we do a couple of levels of tours, and I think we talked about it earlier, our tours are not just through this part of the distillery, but we'll take people into the warehouse and pull a sample from the casks. And that's an experience, that's a touch it, taste it, smell it experience that you don't necessarily get in many other distillery tours.
That's true. Yeah.
And I would add that we want to give people a reason to come all the way out here. So yes, having a bunch of gold medals is one thing, but we've actually, at our initiative, we've started up the Northwest Whiskey Trail.
Okay.
Now, it can only be for single malt whiskies, right? So we don't want vodka or gin or anything, and we're not even doing rye at this point, right? It's focused on single malts, but it includes some great distilleries in Seattle and Oregon, right? Portland and Seattle, and then on the island and in British Columbia mainland. So now there's this Northwest Whiskey Trail that gives you a reason to come out here and spend a week touring some of the best North American distilleries there are out here on the West Coast.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. And you get a Glencairn, if you complete all the distilleries, you get a Glencairn with the Northwest Whiskey logo.
Yeah.
Nobody can buy those. You have to earn it by doing the tour.
That sounds good. Maybe for next time when I come here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about the whiskey at this point. So
cool.
I've done enough talking.
So I can drink. Right. Yeah. Graeme, once again, thank you so much for having me and showing me around and showing everybody else your lovely place and your whiskeys. Yeah, you have to try them for yourself. Obviously, I can't put them through the camera, unfortunately. That's not possible yet. Maybe it's a good thing also. So now it's time for me to drink some whiskey. Maybe I'll share that also with you on camera. And I'm really happy that I came here by bus for once, for a change. And see you guys next time and down the road. Cheers.
Slash of